What would you do if you were left alone in the woods with nothing but your instincts to guide you? Would you panic or fight back? It was a quiet, muggy afternoon when Emily and her mother arrived at the campsite deep in the woods. The kind of quiet where the sounds of nature felt almost eerie, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Emily was no stranger to camping, but today felt different. Maybe it was because they'd chosen this secluded spot, miles away from any other campers, or maybe it was because her mother, usually so composed, seemed more distant than usual. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dirt trail they'd just hiked up. Emily, a 17-year-old girl with auburn hair and curious green eyes, carried the backpack, while her mother, in her early 40s but still youthful in her movements, set up their tent with practiced ease. It had been a while since they'd done something like this. Emily recalled her childhood summers, camping with her mom, fishing by the lake, roasting marshmallows by the fire. But something about today didn't feel right. Her mom was quieter than usual, almost like she was carrying some heavy secret, though Emily couldn't place it. "I'm going to go fetch some water, sweetie. Stay here and set up the rest of the camp," her mom said after a while as she wiped a bead of sweat from her brow. Emily nodded, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in her gut. She set up the rest of their camp, arranging the sleeping bags and the camping gear as her mom instructed, but her thoughts kept drifting back to her mother's strange behavior. Why had her mom chosen such a remote spot this time? Why had she seemed so off? It wasn't like her. As the minutes turned to hours, Emily's unease grew. She checked the time on her phone, 3 p.m. It had been over an hour since her mother left. She glanced up at the sky. It was starting to darken, the clouds beginning to gather in the distance. It was strange. Her mother had always been careful about keeping track of time during their camping trips. Something didn't feel right. "Mom?" Emily called, though she wasn't sure why. She knew her mother wouldn't answer. She wasn't even sure if she'd heard Emily's voice. She tried calling her mother's phone, but the call went straight to voicemail. The signal was weak in these woods, but there was no way her phone should be dead. Emily's mind raced. Her mom was usually a stickler for safety. She'd never been gone this long before. By the time the sun began dipping below the trees, a deep sense of unease gnawed at Emily. She stepped out of the tent, scanning the surroundings. The woods were eerily silent. Not a single bird, no rustling leaves. Just stillness. She called her mom's name again, louder this time, but there was no response. That's when she noticed it. There was something moving in the shadows at the edge of the clearing, a flicker of movement between the thick trees. It was subtle, but it was there. Emily froze, her heart beating faster as a chill ran down her spine. Someone was watching her. She couldn't tell if it was a trick of the light or if her mind was playing tricks on her, but the feeling of being watched was unmistakable. She looked around quickly, scanning every shadow, but there was no sign of anyone. The air felt thick, heavy, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. Panic threatened to take over, but Emily fought to keep calm. "It's nothing," she whispered to herself. "Just your imagination. You're fine." But even as she tried to convince herself, the feeling didn't go away. It only intensified. The wind picked up, carrying a faint rustle of leaves. Emily turned toward the sound, half expecting to see her mother emerge from the woods with a full water bottle in hand. But no one appeared. The rustling grew louder, but it didn't feel natural, like an animal brushing past the underbrush. No, this was something different. It was too deliberate. In that moment, Emily's stomach twisted with fear. The idea that someone or something was watching her, maybe from the shadows of the trees or even from behind the tent, felt very real. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone again, hoping to get a signal, but it was no use. There was still no service. "Okay, calm down. Think," she whispered, trying to regain some semblance of control over her escalating panic. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the map her mom had given her before they set up camp. Emily hadn't paid much attention to it earlier, but now it was the only thing she had. She studied it quickly, trying to figure out where her mom might have gone to fetch water. The nearest stream was about a mile to the south. It was a small, peaceful stream, one of the many they had passed on the hike in. Emily debated her options. Should she stay put? Wait for her mom to come back? Or should she go looking for her? Mom would be back by now, Emily muttered to herself, feeling the knot in her stomach tighten. She had to go find her. The thought of staying in the camp alone, especially with that strange feeling of being watched, was unbearable. Grabbing her flashlight and packing a small first aid kit into her bag, Emily made her decision. She had to find her mother. No matter how scared she felt, staying here alone wasn't an option. As she stepped away from the camp, the darkening woods swallowed her whole. Every step felt like it took her further from safety, but she forced herself to keep moving. There was no turning back now. The woods seemed more oppressive the deeper she went. The trees grew thicker, blocking out the remaining light, and the once welcoming sounds of nature had turned into a distant murmur. Her flashlight flickered with each step, casting shadows that seemed to move with her. Then, she heard it. A snap. A twig breaking behind her. She spun around, her heart hammering in her chest. But there was nothing there. Still, the hairs on the back of her neck prickled. Someone was definitely following her. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Emily stumbled through the woods, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The flashlight flickered in her grip, casting erratic beams across the dense underbrush. Each step seemed to echo in her mind, drowning out the soft sounds of the forest. She felt eyes on her, watching, waiting. But whenever she turned, there was nothing. Only trees and shadows. Her mind raced, a blur of confusion and fear. Why would my mom leave me here? She could hear her mother's voice in her head, telling her to stay put, to wait. But that was hours ago, and now all she had was silence and the ever-present sense of someone, or something, lurking just out of sight. She tried calling her mom's phone again, but once again, it went straight to voicemail. The signal was gone. Her stomach churned. Stay calm, Emily. You've been in worse situations, she muttered to herself, though her voice trembled. Despite her attempts to steady herself, her mind kept drifting back to her mother. This wasn't like her. Her mom had always been the strong one, the one who knew how to handle everything. But recently, over the past few months, things had started to change. The usual smiles had faded, replaced with tight-lipped silence and dark circles under her eyes. Emily had always known her mom was tough, but she hadn't realized how much she was carrying until now. The memory of that day, the day her mother sat her down and told her that they were going on this camping trip, just the two of them, flooded back to her. It had been different from any trip they'd ever taken before. Her mom had been strangely insistent on the location, choosing a remote spot in the woods, far from any other campers. It had been supposed to be a chance for the two of them to reconnect after everything that had happened over the past few months. But now, as Emily trudged through the forest alone, she couldn't help but wonder if there was more to the trip than her mom had let on. Why had she seemed so distant? Why had she insisted on this remote location, far from help? Emily had always thought her mom was just tired from the stress of work, but now she wasn't so sure. The idea that something might be wrong with her mom didn't sit well in her stomach. Was her mother hiding something? Could she have been running from something? Emily shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. Now was not the time to dwell on suspicions. Her mother was out there, somewhere in these woods, and she had to find her. But as she moved deeper into the trees, something kept pulling at her. A nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach, like she was walking into something far bigger than just a missing persons case. Emily's past with her mother had always been a quiet one. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her mother to raise her on her own. It hadn't been easy, but they'd always managed to make do. Her mom worked long hours at a local diner, coming home late at night, her tired eyes hiding the struggles she had faced. Emily had never minded. She knew her mom worked hard for everything they had, and Emily was proud of her. But as Emily grew older, she began to notice the cracks in the facade. The nights when her mom would stare out the window, lost in thought, as if some invisible weight was pulling her down. The way she would avoid certain conversations, skirting around topics that seemed to trigger some deep sadness in her eyes. Emily had asked her once, when she was younger, about her father, what he had been like, why he was no longer around. But her mother had never been forthcoming, always changing the subject or offering a quick, vague answer. "It's not something you need to worry about, sweetie," her mother would say with a strained smile. "You're all that matters now." But as Emily got older, she began to realize that her mom's silence wasn't about protecting her, it was about keeping her from something. There were times when Emily would catch glimpses of old photographs in the attic, pictures of her mother with a man she didn't recognize. There were also letters she'd found, tucked away in an old shoebox, with strange, foreign stamps and messages written in a language Emily couldn't understand. Emily never mentioned it to her mother. She didn't want to push her, didn't want to make things worse. But as she stood in the dark forest, her mind racing with questions, she couldn't shake the feeling that the trip they were on, this trip that seemed so innocent, wasn't about reconnecting at all. Her mother was hiding something. And whatever it was, it had brought them here. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden crack of a branch breaking behind her. Emily spun around, her heart skipping a beat. She raised the flashlight, its beam darting across the dark woods. For a brief moment, she swore she saw movement, something large, something just out of her reach. Her breath caught in her throat. "It's him," she thought. "The person who's been watching me." A sense of dread washed over her as she slowly backed away from the spot, her eyes never leaving the trees. She could feel the presence now, like someone was just a few steps behind her, breathing the same air. She turned quickly, bolting through the trees, desperate to get away. Her heart pounded in her chest as she ran, her breath coming in short gasps. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. All she knew was that she couldn't stay in one place, not while she felt those eyes on her. Emily didn't know how long she ran, but eventually, she stopped, gasping for air. She had reached a clearing, a small space in the woods where the moonlight broke through the canopy of trees. She stood there, listening, her chest heaving with each breath. The feeling of being watched hadn't gone away. It only intensified. She tried to calm herself, telling herself it was just her mind playing tricks. But the longer she stood there, the more convinced she became that something or someone was out there, watching. Suddenly, the beam of her flashlight caught something. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling. But the figure didn't move. The shadows seemed to be watching her, unmoving, as if waiting for something. "What do I do?" Emily thought desperately. Then, without warning, the figure stepped forward. It wasn't her mom. Emily's heart pounded in her chest as the figure stepped forward into the dim light of her flashlight. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. She couldn't tear her eyes away, trying to make out any detail in the shadowy outline before her. The figure was tall, cloaked in darkness, and for a terrifying moment, she couldn't tell whether it was a person or something else entirely. Who are you?" Emily stammered, her voice barely more than a whisper. Her hand gripped the flashlight so tightly her knuckles turned white. The beam trembled in her grasp, catching on the edges of the trees and casting long, distorted shadows that danced around them. The figure didn't respond. It simply stood there, watching her with an unnerving stillness. Emily's breath caught in her throat. There was something about it that felt wrong, something too deliberate, too controlled. A chill ran down her spine. "Answer me," she demanded, her voice gaining strength despite the fear rising within her. The figure still didn't move. For a long, heart-stopping moment, the woods were dead silent, the kind of silence that's so thick you can almost hear your own heartbeat. Then, finally, the figure spoke. The voice was low, gravelly, and it carried a strange, unsettling calmness. "You shouldn't be here, girl." Emily's blood froze. The words were simple, but they felt like a warning. She had no idea who this person was or what he wanted, but something told her that he wasn't a typical camper or anyone who belonged here in these woods. Her mind raced, searching for an escape, but all she could think of was the one question that had been haunting her all day. "Where's my mom?" The man took another step closer, his face still hidden in the shadows. Emily's eyes darted around the clearing, looking for anything that could help her. A large rock to her left, a fallen branch to her right. But nothing felt like it would be enough if things escalated. "Where's my mom?" Emily demanded, her voice steadier now, though her hands were shaking. The man didn't flinch at her words. He simply stood there, his posture relaxed as if he had all the time in the world. "Your mother? She's fine. But she's not the one you should be worried about." Emily's heart skipped a beat. What did he mean by that? She swallowed hard, her thoughts spinning as her pulse quickened. "What do you want from me?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. Her eyes never left the man as she took a small, cautious step backward, then another. The more distance between them, the better. The figure seemed to take a slow, deliberate breath. He didn't make any sudden moves, which only added to the tension hanging in the air. Then, finally, his voice broke the silence again, calm but full of a strange, ominous knowing. "I'm just a messenger. There are things you don't understand, girl. Things you need to know." Emily's stomach tightened, her instincts screaming at her to leave. But some strange pull, kept her rooted to the spot. The unease crept into her thoughts. The words messenger and things you don't understand felt like pieces of a puzzle she didn't want to solve. But she couldn't help it. She had to know. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, though her heart was racing. She didn't know whether she was talking to the man or to herself anymore, trying to make sense of the chaos around her. The man's lips curved upward into a half-smile that sent another shiver down Emily's spine. It wasn't friendly, it was unsettling, almost like he enjoyed the fear in her eyes. "You're in danger," he said, his words slow, deliberate, as if savoring each one. "Your mother, she's tangled up in something much bigger than you can imagine. She never meant for you to get involved, but now you don't have a choice." The words hit Emily like a slap. Danger? Something bigger? What was he talking about? Her mind scrambled, trying to piece it all together. She couldn't let herself think it. Couldn't let herself believe that her mom, the woman who'd always protected her, who'd given up everything for her, was involved in something dangerous. "No," Emily whispered, shaking her head. "You're lying. My mom wouldn't." "I'm not lying," the man interrupted, his voice suddenly cold, hard as stone. "She's been running from her past for years, Emily. Running from them. And now they've found her." The last words felt like a punch to the gut. Them? Who were they? Emily felt like she was suffocating, trapped in this impossible situation. Her mother's past. What had it been? What had she kept hidden all these years? All the questions she'd had growing up, all the things her mother had refused to talk about, now seemed to have an answer, though it was one she wasn't sure she was ready for. "Who are they?" Emily asked, her voice small, though she tried to sound demanding. The figure tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. Then he stepped closer, too close. Emily took a step back, her heart pounding. "You'll find out soon enough," he said cryptically. But for now, just know this. They're coming for you, too." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, suffocating all the hope Emily had left. Her mind spun as she processed everything he had said. Her mother's past. The danger. Them. It was all too much, too fast. "Where is she?" Emily demanded, her voice stronger now, fueled by a rush of adrenaline. "Where's my mom?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned, his footsteps soft on the dirt. But before he disappeared back into the shadows, he gave Emily one last warning. "Keep running, Emily. Keep hiding. It's the only way you'll survive." And just like that, he was gone. Emily stood frozen in the clearing, the echo of his words bouncing around her mind. Her body trembled, every muscle tensed as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was he telling the truth? Was her mom involved in something dangerous? And why did they want her? She had no answers, but one thing was clear: she couldn't stay here anymore. Whatever this man was warning her about, whatever was lurking in the shadows, it was real. Her mom was in danger. And now, so was she. Without another moment's hesitation, Emily turned on her heel and ran. She had to find her mother. And she had to find her fast. The woods, once serene, now felt like a labyrinth of fear, and Emily had no idea where to go next. But she had to keep moving, she had no choice. Emily ran, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps as the dense woods seemed to close in around her. Each step was a frantic attempt to outrun the terror she felt creeping behind her, the lingering presence of the strange man and his chilling words. "They're coming for you, too." The thought repeated in her mind like a haunting echo. Her flashlight swung wildly as she charged through the dark, the beam flickering with each step. The trees loomed tall and imposing, their branches stretching overhead like twisted arms. The moon was little more than a sliver in the sky, casting only the faintest glow on the path ahead. Emily had no idea where she was going, no sense of direction at all. All she knew was that she had to move. "I have to find Mom," she thought desperately. But as she ran, the doubt gnawed at her. What if it was already too late? What if her mom was already gone? She stumbled over a rock and fell to her knees, skin scraping against the rough ground. Tears blurred her vision, but she quickly wiped them away, forcing herself back on her feet. There was no time to waste. The man's warning had shaken her to her core, but she couldn't let it break her. She couldn't stop. Not now. Not when she was this close to finding her mother. Panic surged through her chest, and with it came the bitter realization she didn't even know where to start looking. They could be anywhere in these woods, and the thought of searching blindly alone was terrifying. "Think, Emily. Think." Her mind spun back to the map her mom had given her earlier. She couldn't remember much about it, but she did recall the general layout of the area. They had crossed a stream on their hike in, and the small camp was set up near the edge of a cliff. Her mom had mentioned that there was a ranger station a few miles to the west, but would she even make it there in time? Then it hit her: if her mom had gone to fetch water from the stream, that's where she'd probably be. She had to go back there. But was it safe to return? Was the man still out there, waiting in the shadows? A chill ran through her, but she shook it off. Her mom's safety came first. The rest could wait. Emily pushed through the brush, moving with more purpose now. The feeling of being watched still lingered, but she tried to push it aside. She had to focus on finding her mom. The woods were vast, but the stream wasn't too far. She could reach it in under an hour if she pushed hard enough. Her legs burned with exertion as she ran, the sound of her feet slapping against the forest floor the only noise besides the distant chirping of crickets. The path grew narrower and more treacherous as she went, the thick underbrush slowing her down. She could hear her breath ragged, her mind racing. Where was she? Had her mother made it back to the stream yet? Emily's thoughts were jumbled, tangled in a web of worry and fear. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of running, Emily stumbled into a small clearing where the faint gurgle of water reached her ears. She stopped, listening. The stream. She carefully approached the water's edge, her heart pounding. The moonlight caught the flowing water, glimmering silver as it rushed over the rocks. The area looked peaceful, almost serene, but Emily couldn't shake the anxiety crawling up her spine. She scanned the area frantically, searching for any sign of her mother. Nothing. Where could she be? Mom? She called out hesitantly, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. Mom, are you here? The sound of her voice seemed to break the stillness of the night. The breeze rustled the leaves in the trees above her, but there was no response. She swallowed hard, her stomach turning. Just then, a faint noise from deeper in the woods caught her attention. A rustling, like someone moving through the underbrush, but it wasn't the wind. It was someone else. Her heart skipped. Was it the man again? Emily's breath hitched in her throat, but she couldn't stop herself from taking a cautious step forward. The sound was coming closer, the crunch of leaves and twigs growing louder with each passing second. Mom, she called again, louder this time. The rustling stopped. Emily held her breath, listening, waiting. Then, the voice she had been longing to hear broke the silence. Emily? Her heart leaped in her chest, and before she even realized what she was doing, she broke into a sprint toward the sound of her mother's voice. Mom? I'm here, she cried out, her voice hoarse with relief. As she pushed through the brush, the figure of her mother emerged from the darkness, standing at the edge of the stream. She looked disheveled, her hair was messy, her clothes were damp, and there was a distant look in her eyes. But it was her, unmistakably. Emily rushed forward and threw her arms around her, relief flooding through her in waves. Oh my God, Mom, I've been looking everywhere for you. Emily gasped, hugging her mother tightly. I was so scared. Her mom stiffened slightly in her arms, and Emily pulled back, worried. What's wrong? What happened? She asked, looking up at her mother's face. Her mom's expression was unreadable, but there was something behind her eyes that made Emily's stomach turn. It wasn't just the exhaustion, the fear, it was something more. Something deeper. I'm sorry, Emily, her mom said quietly, her voice trembling just a bit. I never wanted you to find out this way. Find out what? What's going on? Why did you leave me alone at the camp? Why didn't you come back sooner? Her mother looked away, her gaze drifting to the dark woods around them. She seemed lost in thought, like she was weighing something heavy on her mind. There's so much you don't understand, her mom whispered, barely audible over the sound of the rushing water. And I was trying to protect you, Emily. But I can't anymore. Emily's confusion deepened. Protect me from what? Her mother's eyes flicked back to her, haunted and pained. From them. They found us, and we don't have much time. Before Emily could respond, her mom grabbed her arm, her grip tight with urgency. We need to move. Now. Emily's mind spun as she tried to process her mother's words. Them? Who are they? Mom. Please, she pleaded. What's going on? Why are we running? What's happening? Her mother's face hardened, and she looked over her shoulder into the dark woods. Her voice was quiet, but urgent. They're coming for us, Emily. And we have to be ready to fight. The words landed like a punch. Emily felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Her mind was struggling to catch up, to make sense of the chaos swirling around them. But her mother's eyes told her all she needed to know. Whatever was coming, it was already here. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What do you think your reaction would be if you found out your life was about to change in ways you couldn't even imagine? The tension between Emily and her mother hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Emily's mind raced, her heart thudding in her chest as she tried to process everything. The words her mother had spoken, they're coming for us, and we need to fight, echoed in her ears, making her feel like she was caught in a nightmare. "Fight? What are you talking about, Mom?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. She felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. She wanted to understand. She needed to understand. But her mother's eyes were distant, as if she were seeing something far beyond this moment, something Emily couldn't grasp. Her mom turned, her face grim, and motioned for Emily to follow her. "We need to move quickly. They'll be looking for us." "But why?" Emily asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "What are you running from? Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" Her mother didn't answer at first. She simply glanced nervously around the woods, as if expecting someone, or something, to jump out of the shadows. Emily could tell that whatever was going on, it had already started, and they were in the middle of it. "This isn't something I ever wanted you to be a part of," her mom said, her voice barely above a whisper, strained and heavy with regret. "I tried to protect you, Emily. I thought I could keep you safe. But now we have to move. And you need to trust me." Trust? Emily's mind buzzed with confusion and fear. How could she trust her mom when she'd been kept in the dark all her life? What kind of danger were they in? Who were they? Before she could ask more questions, her mother's grip tightened on her arm, pulling her away from the stream and deeper into the forest. "We don't have time for this," she urged, urgency thick in her voice. "We need to find shelter now." Emily stumbled along behind her mother, her mind a whirl of questions and emotions. As they walked, the woods around them seemed to close in, the shadows growing thicker, darker as if they were being swallowed whole. The air felt colder, more oppressive, and the usual sounds of the forest, the chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves, were eerily absent. Her mom led them along a narrow path, the earth beneath their feet soft with damp moss. The trees towered overhead like silent sentinels, their branches twisting in unnatural directions. Emily's pulse quickened as a sense of foreboding crept over her. There was something wrong about this place, something that made her skin crawl. "Where are we going?" Emily asked, her voice small, almost lost in the overwhelming quiet of the forest. Her legs ached from running, and the cold air made her shiver. "We're almost there," her mom replied, her voice distant, as though she wasn't fully present in the moment. "You'll understand soon, I promise." The further they went, the more disorienting the forest became. The trees felt like they were closing in, their branches stretching out like grasping hands, the shadows deepening with every step. The path they followed seemed to wind in strange, unpredictable directions, twisting and turning with no clear end in sight. Emily felt a growing unease in the pit of her stomach, as if the very woods were conspiring against them. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking in silence, her mother stopped. They had arrived at a small, secluded clearing, surrounded by thick trees that blocked out most of the sky. The air was thick with moisture, and the ground was slick with damp leaves and fallen branches. In the center of the clearing was a small, weathered cabin, barely visible through the overgrown brush. It looked abandoned, its wooden walls chipped and faded by years of neglect. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had never seen this place before. She didn't even know it existed. Her mother stood still for a moment, her eyes scanning the surrounding woods as if checking for signs of movement. Then she motioned for Emily to follow her toward the cabin. "Come on," her mom said, her voice firm. "This is the safest place for now." Emily hesitated. Her mind was still spinning from the cryptic warning her mother had given her, and the overwhelming sense of dread that had taken over the woods didn't help. But there was no time to argue. She followed her mother into the cabin, the door creaking open with an unsettling groan. Inside, the air was musty and stale, the smell of old wood and decay thick in the air. The walls were lined with shelves, most of which were empty, save for a few dusty, forgotten objects. The only light came from a small window near the back, where the faintest trace of moonlight filtered through the grime-covered glass. Her mother closed the door behind them, and Emily's breath caught in her throat as she looked around the room. It was bare, save for a few old pieces of furniture, an overturned chair, a rickety table, and a threadbare rug in the corner. But what caught her attention were the strange symbols carved into the wooden walls. They were old, faded, and yet still unsettling. Some of them looked like runes, others like strange, intricate patterns. "What is this place?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling as she stepped further into the cabin. Her mother was already rummaging through the cabinets in the corner, her movements quick and deliberate. "This is where it all started. Where it began." "Where what began?" Emily demanded, her patience fraying. "Mom, you're not making any sense. Who's coming for us? What are those symbols on the walls?" Her mother paused, glancing back at her with a pained expression. Her eyes were dark with worry, and there was something unreadable in her gaze, something that made Emily feel like she was seeing her mom for the first time. "The symbols, they're part of the legacy," her mother said softly, her voice distant. "A legacy I've been trying to escape. But I couldn't run forever. And now you're involved." The words sent a shiver through Emily's spine. Legacy? Escape? What was her mother talking about? Her mom turned and faced her, taking a deep breath as if gathering strength. "They're coming for us because of what I did, what I've done, the things I thought I could hide. I thought I could keep you safe from all of it." Emily's mind raced. "Who are they? Why are they after you? Why did you never tell me any of this?" Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't want you to know, Emily. I didn't want you to be a part of this world." But now, her voice broke. Now it's too late. Emily's chest tightened as she realized that whatever her mother had been hiding, whatever had brought them to this cabin, was far more dangerous than she could have imagined. And now, they were both caught in the middle of it. The silence in the cabin grew heavy, thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Emily stood frozen, her mind spinning as she tried to make sense of the chaos around her. The woods, the symbols, the cryptic warnings, her mother's secret past. None of it made sense. "Mom, what's happening?" she whispered, her voice filled with desperation. "What do we do now?" Her mother's eyes flicked nervously to the door, her hand trembling as she reached for a small wooden box on the shelf. "We wait," she said quietly, her voice a bare thread of sound. "We wait, and we prepare. Because what's coming, what's been following us, it's only a matter of time before it finds us." The realization hit Emily like a ton of bricks. She wasn't just in the dark about her mom's past, she was part of the story now. And the storm that was coming? It wasn't something they could run from. It was something they would have to face. The minutes ticked by in agonizing silence as Emily and her mother sat in the cabin. The air was thick with tension, and Emily's mind raced. What had her mother meant by "we wait"? What were they waiting for? And what was the legacy her mother had mentioned? Emily's eyes flicked toward the small wooden box her mother had retrieved from the shelf. It was simple, old, and covered in intricate carvings like the ones on the walls. The box looked harmless enough, but something about it felt off. It felt like it held a secret, one that Emily wasn't supposed to know. Her mother sat across from her at the rickety table, staring at the box in her hands, her fingers tracing the carvings absent-mindedly. There was a faraway look in her eyes, as if she were lost in a memory, and Emily felt a growing unease. The woman sitting across from her wasn't just her mother anymore, she was someone else. Someone haunted by the past. Finally, her mother broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted you to be involved in this, Emily. I wanted to protect you from all of it." Her voice cracked, and she paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "But now it's too late." Emily couldn't sit still any longer. The fear and confusion had built up too much. She had to know the truth. "Mom, please," she said, her voice shaking. "Tell me what's going on. Who's coming for us? What's in that box?" Her mother's eyes flicked toward her, and for a moment, Emily saw something almost like regret flash in her eyes. But it was gone so quickly that she wondered if she had imagined it. With a long sigh, her mother finally spoke. "The things I've been running from, they're called the Watchers. I've been trying to protect you from them, but they always find a way. They have for years." "The Watchers," Emily repeated, her voice filled with disbelief. "What are they? And why have they been after you?" Her mother looked down at the box in her hands, her fingers tightening around it. "They're not human," she said quietly. "At least, not the way you or I understand it. They are something ancient, beings from another realm. They've been following our family for generations, ever since your great-grandfather made a deal with them. A deal that came with a price." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. "A deal? What kind of deal?" Her mother hesitated, her eyes flicking nervously toward the door. "It doesn't matter now," she said sharply. "What matters is that we can't outrun them anymore. We can't hide. They've found us." Emily's heart pounded in her chest. "But why? Why are they after us? What do they want from us?" Her mother took a deep breath, her face pale. "They don't want anything from us directly. They want you, Emily." The words hit Emily like a slap to the face. Her mind reeled. "They want me? Me?" she repeated in a breathless voice. "Why me?" Her mother's eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sorrow. "Because you're the one who can break the cycle. You're the one who can stop them." Emily shook her head, her thoughts tumbling over one another. "Stop them? How? I don't even know what they are. How am I supposed to stop something like that?" Her mother's voice grew more urgent. "There's no time to explain everything, Emily. But I've spent years learning about them, studying their weaknesses. And I'm not going to let them get to you. Not now. Not after everything." "But Mom, I don't—" Emily started to protest, but her mother's hand shot up, silencing her. "We don't have time for doubts," her mother snapped, her tone sharp and commanding. "They're here, Emily. And we need to prepare. We need to defend ourselves." The urgency in her mother's voice cut through Emily's fear, but it also raised more questions. "Defend ourselves? How? What do you mean, defend?" Emily asked, her voice filled with a mix of fear and curiosity. "What can we do to stop them?" Her mother stood abruptly and walked toward the wooden box. She set it down on the table in front of Emily, her hands trembling as she slowly opened the lid. Inside was a collection of strange, archaic items, a bundle of old, weathered papers, a silver medallion with a strange symbol, and what appeared to be a small vial filled with a glowing liquid. Emily's gaze fell on the vial, the liquid inside swirling and shifting like it had a life of its own. The glow was faint but unnerving, casting an eerie light in the dim cabin. Her mother took the vial and held it up. "This," she said, her voice tight with emotion, "is the only thing that can protect us. It's a blood-binding elixir, made from the essence of the Watchers themselves." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean, essence of the Watchers? How is that even possible?" Her mother looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and determination. "I've done things, Emily, things I never wanted to keep you safe. This vial is the only way to keep them from finding us. But it's not a permanent solution. We have to destroy the source of their power before it's too late." "The source?" Emily asked, still struggling to comprehend everything her mother was saying. "What do you mean? Where is the source?" Her mother's eyes darkened. "The Watchers draw their power from a place, a hidden gateway between their realm and ours. I thought I could keep it sealed, but over time, the seal has weakened. They're already trying to break through. And if they do, we won't stand a chance." Emily felt her pulse race. A hidden gateway? A place where these ancient beings could cross into their world? It sounded like something out of a nightmare. "Then what do we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Her mother's face was grim. "We need to find the gateway and close it for good. I've been tracking its location for years. But now that they know we're here, they'll stop at nothing to find us." Emily's thoughts swirled as her mother's words sank in. A gateway between worlds? The Watchers? This was all too much to process. She had never imagined that her simple camping trip could turn into something so impossible. Her mother moved quickly, her eyes scanning the room for anything useful. We don't have much time. They'll come for us soon. We have to act fast. Emily's head was spinning, but one thing was clear. The moment they had stepped into these woods, their lives had changed. There was no going back. They were caught in something far bigger than themselves, something ancient and dangerous. But as her mother grabbed a worn map from the shelf and spread it out on the table, Emily's resolve solidified. Whatever this was, whatever lay ahead, she was going to face it. For herself, for her mother, and for the future. Her mother's voice broke through her thoughts. "Are you ready, Emily?" Emily didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I'm ready." The weight of her mother's words pressed down on Emily's shoulders like a boulder. They weren't just running from something, they were being hunted by something ancient, something beyond her understanding. The world she knew, the world that had felt so simple just days ago, was slipping through her fingers like sand. Her mother was already in motion, her eyes scanning the map she had spread out on the table. "The gateway isn't far from here," she said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "I've been tracking it for years. We need to get to it before they do." Emily swallowed hard, trying to push back the fear that gnawed at her insides. The Watchers. A hidden gateway between realms. A vial of glowing liquid. It was all too much to take in. And yet, here she was, standing in the middle of it, about to embark on a mission that would determine the fate of both their worlds. "We can't just go marching in there," Emily said, her voice thick with hesitation. "We don't even know what's waiting for us. What if it's a trap?" Her mother's eyes met hers with a look of fierce determination. "They'll try to stop us, Emily. They'll try to use fear against us, manipulate us into turning back. But we can't afford to do that. We have to move now, or we risk losing everything." Emily's stomach churned. She had no idea how they were supposed to close this gateway, whatever it was. And the thought of facing them, the Watchers, sent a wave of terror through her body. But she couldn't back down now. Not after everything her mother had said. This was their only shot. "Okay," Emily said, her voice barely audible but resolute. "Okay, let's go." Her mother gave her a sharp nod. "We move at first light. We'll need to be quick and quiet. The forest isn't just a place of refuge, it's also where the Watchers can track us. We have to stay ahead of them." The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Her mother packed the strange vial of glowing liquid carefully into a small satchel along with a few other supplies, the map, some food, a flashlight, and a handful of other tools that Emily didn't understand. Her mother didn't explain everything, but Emily could sense the urgency in her movements, in the way her hands shook as she zipped up the bag. When they finally left the cabin, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows through the dense trees. The air was thick with fog, the woods eerily quiet, as if holding its breath. Her mother led the way, the map clutched tightly in her hand. They moved through the underbrush with silent precision, their footsteps muffled by the wet earth beneath them. Emily stayed close behind, her senses on high alert. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig felt like it could be the Watchers, ready to descend upon them. As they walked deeper into the forest, the trees began to grow taller, the canopy above thick with tangled vines and branches. The fog clung to the ground like a heavy blanket, making the path ahead feel impossibly narrow. Emily's breath came in shallow bursts as she tried to keep up with her mother, who seemed to move effortlessly through the dense wilderness. They hadn't spoken much since they left the cabin. Her mother's focus was unyielding, and Emily knew better than to interrupt. But the questions still weighed heavily on her mind. What exactly were they looking for? What would the gateway even look like? And what would happen if they didn't make it in time? Her mind was swirling with possibilities when her mother suddenly stopped, her body stiffening. Emily froze in place, her heart pounding as she looked around, trying to understand what had caused the change in her mother's demeanor. Her mother's voice was low, barely above a whisper. "We're not alone." The words sent a jolt of fear through Emily's chest. Her eyes darted around, searching the shadows of the trees, but there was nothing. Just the thick fog and the silent woods. "I don't see anything," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Her mother's eyes were narrowed, scanning the woods with a sharp intensity. "They're close. I can feel them." Emily's pulse quickened as she took a slow, deliberate step back. Her eyes were drawn to the eerie stillness of the forest. The trees seemed to loom closer, the shadows lengthening as though they were alive. Something was out there, something waiting in the mist. She could feel it in the pit of her stomach, a crawling sensation that made her skin break out in goosebumps. Her mother didn't hesitate. She reached into the satchel at her side and pulled out a small, carved wooden totem. It was no bigger than her hand, but it glowed with a faint, pulsing light. "This will help," her mother murmured. She held the totem in front of her, chanting something under her breath in a language Emily didn't recognize. The air around them seemed to shift, the fog clearing just slightly as though the totem was pushing it back. The silence deepened, becoming almost oppressive. The fog swirled around them like a living thing, and Emily could feel her heart racing in her chest. She wanted to scream, to ask her mother what was going on, but she couldn't find her voice. All she could do was watch, frozen in place. Her mother's face was tight with concentration, her body trembling slightly as she continued to chant. The totem's glow intensified, casting long shadows on the forest floor. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the presence in the woods was gone. The fog seemed to lift, and the silence shattered, replaced by the distant call of birds and the rustling of leaves. Emily blinked, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What was that?" she asked, her voice shaky. Her mother lowered the totem and placed it back in the satchel. She looked at Emily, her face pale but determined. "The Watchers can't be seen, at least not in the way you and I see. But they can be felt. And right now, they're aware of us. We've been marked." "Marked?" Emily echoed, her throat dry. "Marked for what?" Her mother looked around them, as if ensuring they were still alone. "Marked for tracking. It won't be long before they come after us." Emily's mind raced. Her mother had said earlier that they needed to get to the gateway before the Watchers did. But now, after whatever had just happened in the woods, Emily wasn't sure how they were going to outrun them. Or even survive. "We need to keep moving," her mother said, her voice steely with resolve. "If they've already sensed us, it's only a matter of time before they make their move." Emily nodded, her legs stiff with the tension of what lay ahead. She wanted to ask more questions, to understand what was happening, but there was no time. Her mother was right. They had to keep moving. With one last glance around, her mother set off down the path again, her steps swift and sure. Emily followed, her thoughts still racing as the woods closed in around them. The Watchers were coming, and time was running out. The fog clung to the trees like an ancient secret, whispering its secrets to those who dared listen. Emily's breath caught in her throat with every step. The air felt heavier now, more oppressive. Every rustle in the forest, every snap of a twig, had her heart leaping in her chest, her pulse racing. The Watchers were out there, somewhere, watching, waiting. She could feel it now, that cold presence lurking just beyond the edges of her awareness. Her mother moved quickly, her pace unrelenting, as if driven by something more than just fear. She didn't look back, didn't falter. Emily had learned long ago not to question her mother's instincts, but today, more than ever, she wished she understood what was happening, what she was running toward. Finally, after what felt like hours of navigating the winding, narrow path through the dense woods, her mother slowed. They were nearing the edge of the forest, and ahead, Emily could see a clearing, barely visible through the fog, but there was something else, too. A strange, unnatural hum filled the air, vibrating through the ground beneath her feet. It made her teeth ache. Her mother's face had gone pale, her eyes narrowed with focus. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, almost as if she were waiting for something. Then, she turned to Emily, her face solemn. "We're close," her mother said, her voice tight with a mix of fear and determination. "But I need you to stay close to me. Don't move ahead unless I say so. Do you understand?" Emily nodded, though every part of her body screamed to break free, to see what lay ahead, to end this nightmare. But her mother's expression left no room for argument. Whatever was coming, it was serious. She couldn't afford to risk their only chance of survival. Her mother pulled a small compass from her pocket, studying it carefully before tucking it away. Then, with a final glance around, she moved forward again, her steps deliberate. Emily followed, her feet light, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As they reached the edge of the clearing, Emily felt the temperature drop. It was as if they had crossed an invisible threshold into another world. The mist in the air seemed to take on a darker hue, swirling in erratic patterns. And then Emily saw it. At the center of the clearing stood a stone archway, jagged and ancient. The stone was blackened, as if it had been scorched by something, though there was no visible source of fire. The archway itself stood empty, a dark void in the middle of the forest. There were markings on the stone, worn and faded by centuries of weathering, but even in their worn state, they gave off a sense of power, an ancient, unholy power that made the hair on the back of Emily's neck stand on end. "The gateway," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the illusion. Her mother nodded, her face grim. "Yes, this is it. The portal between their realm and ours. We need to seal it before they can use it." Emily's mind raced. Seal it? She had no idea how to do that. She didn't even understand how the gateway worked, how it could even exist in the first place. But before she could ask another question, her mother stepped forward, a determined look in her eyes. "Wait here," she said. "This is where the real danger begins. I need to do something first to weaken the gateway's power. It's the only way we have a chance of closing it." Emily wanted to protest. She didn't want to be left alone here, standing at the edge of an ancient, supernatural doorway. But her mother's look left no room for argument. There was something about the archway that made Emily's stomach churn, a sense of deep, unsettling unease. She swallowed hard and nodded, stepping back toward the shadows of the trees. Her mother moved closer to the archway, the air around her thickening. The hum that had filled the clearing intensified, vibrating through the ground beneath Emily's feet. She watched as her mother knelt before the stone arch, reaching into the satchel at her side and pulling out the small vial of glowing liquid. With a single, swift motion, her mother uncorked the vial and poured its contents onto the ground before the archway. The liquid sparkled as it hit the earth, glowing with an ethereal light that seemed to ripple outward, dancing across the stones like fireflies. The hum intensified, the air growing heavier, colder. Emily held her breath, her eyes locked on the scene before her, waiting for something to happen. But nothing came. The gateway remained silent, unmoving, as though it were simply a part of the landscape, an ancient relic that had long since lost its power. Her mother's hand trembled as she placed the vial back into the satchel. She stood and stepped back, her eyes fixed on the arch. The silence that followed felt oppressive, like the calm before a storm. And then, the earth trembled. It was subtle at first, a low rumble beneath Emily's feet. But then it grew, the ground shaking harder, the hum of the gateway turning into a deafening roar. Emily stumbled, gripping a nearby tree for support, her eyes wide in panic. "Mom," she called out, but her voice was drowned by the roar of the gateway. The stone archway before them began to shift, the markings on the stones glowing a bright, fiery red as though the arch was alive. A dark wind swept through the clearing, its icy tendrils wrapping around Emily's body, pulling at her hair, at her clothes. Her mother's face was contorted with concentration. "It's working," she shouted over the noise, her voice barely audible. "But we're not done yet. Keep your eyes on me, Emily. Don't look away." Emily's heart raced as she tried to steady herself, but the shaking beneath her feet grew stronger, making it harder to keep her balance. She watched as her mother began chanting in that strange, ancient language once more, her voice rising over the howling winds. The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, and the stone archway began to shimmer, warping in the air like a mirage. "Close the portal, close the portal, close the portal," her mother muttered frantically. Emily's eyes darted back to the archway, watching as the space within the stones seemed to pulse, like the beating of a heart, each beat faster than the last. And then it happened. A figure stepped through the archway. It was tall, its form cloaked in shadow, its face obscured. But Emily felt it, the oppressive, suffocating presence of the Watcher as it materialized before them, its figure flickering in and out of focus. The air turned frigid, and Emily's breath hitched in her throat. She could feel the Watcher's eyes on her, even though she couldn't see them. Her mother didn't hesitate. She thrust her hands forward, a burst of light exploding from her palms, streaking toward the archway. The figure faltered, and then, boom, the entire clearing was filled with a blinding light. For a moment, Emily couldn't see anything. The world around her went white, and she felt herself being pulled away, as if the very earth beneath her was collapsing. When the light faded, Emily found herself kneeling on the ground, the air still heavy with the scent of ozone. She looked up, and the gateway was gone. The stone arch was empty, silent. Her mother was kneeling beside her, her breathing labored, her face pale and drawn. "We did it," her mother whispered, her voice raw. "It's sealed. For now." But as Emily looked at the spot where the gateway had been, a shiver ran down her spine. Something wasn't over. Not yet. The air was eerily calm now. The winds had died down, the fog that had once enveloped the forest had dissipated, and the deafening hum of the gateway was gone. But despite the sudden silence, the uneasy tension in Emily's chest refused to fade. The woods, which had once seemed like an escape, now felt more like a trap, a vast, oppressive cage. Her mother, still on the ground, took a long, shaky breath. She looked exhausted, her face pale, her lips pressed tight as though trying to keep something from escaping. But Emily could see it in her mother's eyes. The relief, yes, but also something deeper. Something darker. "We did it," her mother said again, this time more to herself than to Emily, her voice a rasp. "But at what cost?" Emily stood up, her legs unsteady as the full weight of their escape hit her. The gateway had been sealed, for now at least, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something inside her mother, and something deep within the forest itself. "What do you mean?" Emily asked, her voice trembling as she helped her mother to her feet. "You said we had to close the gateway before they could use it. We did. We stopped them." Her mother's eyes flickered with something unreadable, a flash of something ancient and sorrowful. She wiped her brow, then reached for the satchel, pulling out the small totem again. Emily's eyes widened as her mother held it tightly, its soft glow pulsing weakly, as though drained of power. "The price of sealing the gate is never small," her mother said, her voice low. "The balance has been shifted. The Watchers may have been stopped, for now. But we've made a deal, Emily. And deals like these always come with consequences." A chill crawled down Emily's spine. Her mother's words hung in the air like a warning, but Emily was too overwhelmed to fully understand. "What deal?" "We didn't," she began, but her words caught in her throat as a sudden unease filled her chest. Her mother's gaze softened, but there was something sharp beneath it, like the glint of a blade half hidden in shadow. "We didn't just seal the gateway, Emily," she said quietly. "We've bound ourselves to it. To the Watchers. To the forest. There's a bond now. An ancient one." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her mother spoke as if she were confessing to something terrible, as though they were trapped in a web they couldn't escape. The weight of her words pressed on Emily's chest, and for the first time since they had entered the forest, she felt the ground beneath her feet shift. Not just physically, but spiritually, like something was stirring beneath the surface of the world they knew. "Bound to the Watchers?" Emily echoed, incredulous. "But I thought we stopped them." Her mother nodded slowly. "We did. But they'll be back. They always come back. The Watchers are never truly gone, Emily. Their realm is one of shadows and mirrors. When one gate closes, another opens. And when you stop them, they don't simply disappear. They have a way of reaching through the cracks in the seal, through the gaps in the protection we've put in place. They're patient. They'll wait. And so will we." Emily's mind spun. The world felt like it was shifting beneath her, like she was losing her grasp on reality. The Watchers weren't defeated. Not really. They were just waiting for the right moment to come through again. Her mother continued, her voice now cold, as though she were speaking about a past long buried. "What we've done here has changed things. We've tied ourselves to the forest, to the gateway. And that bond isn't easy to break. The Watchers won't just come through again. They'll come for us." Emily swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. She had no idea how to process what her mother was saying. A part of her wanted to run, to escape, but she knew deep down that there was no escaping this. Not anymore. "What do we do?" Emily asked, the question barely above a whisper. Her mother hesitated, and for the first time, Emily saw uncertainty flicker in her eyes. "I don't know yet, but we have to keep moving. We can't stay here. Not with the bond so fresh. The forest is alive with their presence now. We need to find the others who've dealt with this before, those who know the price of sealing a gate like this." Before Emily could ask more, a deep growl resonated from the edge of the woods, cutting through the quiet like a knife. Her heart lurched, her body frozen in terror. Her mother's face went ashen. "They've already come. We don't have much time." Emily's eyes widened as she turned to the direction of the sound. There, in the distance, through the trees, she saw them, figures moving in the shadows. Tall, thin, with eyes that seemed to glow even in the dim forest light. The Watchers. Their presence was unmistakable, like a suffocating fog that blocked out the light, that clouded her thoughts. Her mother grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the clearing with an urgency that only deepened Emily's fear. "We have to move. Now." They ran. The forest, which had seemed peaceful just hours ago, now felt like a labyrinth. The trees closed in around them as they sprinted through the underbrush, branches grabbing at their clothes, roots tangling beneath their feet. The sound of the Watchers grew louder, their voices whispering on the wind, their growls reverberating through the ground. Emily's breath came in ragged gasps as they pushed deeper into the woods, but her mother never faltered. She led them, her face a mask of determination, as though she were not afraid, yet Emily could see the cracks beneath her confidence. They were being pursued, hunted. The Watchers were closing in. "What are they going to do to us?" Emily managed to gasp, her legs burning with exhaustion as they continued their flight. Her mother's face was grim. "They'll take us. Use us to open the gateway again. They'll make us their servants until the balance is undone." "Then how do we stop them?" Emily asked, her voice desperate. Her mother's eyes darkened, her lips pressing into a thin line. "We can't stop them on our own. We need help. But we can't go back to the cabin. It's too dangerous now." Emily's thoughts raced as they ran through the forest. She didn't know where they were going or if they were even heading in the right direction. All she could focus on was the sound of the Watchers behind them, their whispers growing closer. They stumbled upon a small, dilapidated building tucked away deep in the woods, an old stone cottage overgrown with ivy and moss. It looked abandoned, forgotten. A safe place. But was it really? Her mother didn't hesitate. In there. Quickly. They burst through the door, slamming it shut behind them. Inside, the cottage was dark and cold, but there was a strange stillness to it, like the calm before a storm. Her mother immediately went to a small chest in the corner and began rummaging through it, her movements frantic. Emily stood by the door, trying to steady her breath, but the gnawing fear wouldn't leave her. It wasn't just the Watchers that terrified her anymore. It was the uncertainty, the growing sense that everything was spiraling out of control. Finally, her mother turned to her, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "This is the key," she said quietly. "We need to use it to break the bond. But it's risky. If we fail, what?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. Her mother's eyes darkened. "We won't just be hunted anymore. We'll become part of the forest, part of their realm." The words hung heavy in the air, like a death sentence. Emily didn't know what was worse, the idea of being caught by the Watchers or the terrifying possibility that her mother was about to do something that could change both their fates forever. But one thing was clear. This was no longer just about survival. It was about something much darker. The forest had claimed them, and now they were its prisoners. The air in the cottage was thick with tension, a quiet hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. The only sound was the faint rustling of the cloth as her mother held the bundle in her hands. Emily's pulse raced, her heart pounding against her chest as she stood in the dimly lit room, watching her mother with wide eyes. The bundle in her mother's hands seemed to pulse with energy, almost as if it were alive, as if the very fabric of the cloth contained some deep, hidden power. Her mother's eyes were locked on it, her face a mask of determination and fear. "Mom, what is that?" Emily asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her mother hesitated for a moment before speaking, her voice soft and laced with an emotion Emily couldn't place. "This," she said, "is the only way to break the bond we've created. It's an ancient artifact, a relic of the old world. If we use it properly, we can sever the connection to the Watchers, but if we don't, they will own us. All of us. Forever." Emily's mind raced. Her heart threatened to leap from her chest. The weight of her mother's words hung heavy in the air. The Watchers were already closing in, and now they were in a race against time. Every second felt like an eternity, each heartbeat thundering in her ears. "Then, what are we waiting for?" Emily asked, urgency creeping into her voice. "We can't let them get to us. We have to act now." Her mother's gaze softened, her eyes filled with a sorrow that Emily had never seen before. "I wish it were that simple, sweetheart. Using this artifact, it will require a sacrifice. A heavy one." "A sacrifice?" Emily echoed, her throat going dry. "What do you mean?" Her mother's lips trembled as she slowly unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small, intricately carved stone, smooth and cold to the touch, its surface glistening with an otherworldly sheen. The stone seemed to pulse with an internal light, its glow flickering like a heartbeat. "This is the Heartstone," her mother explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "It holds the power to sever the bond with the Watchers, but it demands a price. The energy it consumes has to come from somewhere, and it can only be given by one of us." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "You're saying one of us has to die?" Her mother didn't answer immediately, but the look in her eyes spoke volumes. Emily's stomach churned, and her legs felt weak. She could barely hold herself up as the full weight of her mother's words sank in. Her heart screamed in protest, but at the same time, she couldn't escape the terrible truth that loomed in front of them. Her mother's hand trembled as she held the Heartstone. "It doesn't have to be death, Emily, but it will cost something irreplaceable. A piece of who we are. The stone will take what it needs to sever the bond, and what it takes it will never return." Emily's mind spun. The fear that had consumed her before now felt like a distant memory. This was real. The Watchers, the gateway, the forest, it was all part of something much larger, much darker than she had ever imagined. And now her mother was asking her to make a choice that no one should ever have to make. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, but she blinked them away. "No," she said firmly, shaking her head. "I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me. I can't." Her mother reached out, gently cupping Emily's face in her hands. Her eyes were soft, but there was a finality in her gaze. "Emily, you've already lost so much, but you have to understand something. This bond, this curse, it's not just about survival. It's about freedom. If we don't sever it, we'll become them. We'll become part of the Watcher's realm. The price is steep, but it's the only way to stop them from taking everything we know, everything we love." Emily shook her head again, desperately trying to hold on to some semblance of control. Her mother was right. If they didn't act now, the Watchers would take more than just their lives. They would take their souls, their very essence. But the thought of losing her mother, of losing everything she had left, was unbearable. I can't let you do this," Emily whispered, her voice breaking. Her mother's face softened, and she pulled Emily into an embrace, holding her tightly as though trying to reassure them both. "I've already made my peace, Emily. I knew this moment would come. But you must understand, you have to be strong. You have to carry the torch for both of us, because if we fail, there will be no one left to protect this world." Emily clung to her mother, the weight of their situation crushing her from all sides. "But why you? Why can't we just fight them together?" Her mother pulled away slightly, her eyes filled with love and sorrow. "Because, my dear, some battles can't be fought with strength alone. And you," she paused, as though searching for the right words. "You are the one who can truly stop them. You are the key to their destruction. But you won't be able to do that if I'm still here, pulling you back. You have to be free." Emily's heart broke in two as her mother's words sank in. She knew, deep down, that her mother was right. This wasn't just about sealing a gateway. It was about breaking the cycle, about ending the Watcher's reign once and for all. But how could she be the one to carry that weight? How could she be strong enough to stand alone when the one person who had always been there for her was now slipping away? Her mother's hand rested gently on Emily's shoulder. "I've given everything I can to get us this far. Now it's your turn. You must carry on. The Watchers, they'll stop at nothing to break through again. They'll come for you, Emily. But you must be ready." "I don't know if I can do this without you," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Her mother smiled, her face calm despite the tears glistening in her eyes. "You've already done more than you know. You're stronger than you think, Emily. I've always known that." The words rang in Emily's ears, but they didn't bring comfort. How could they, when every part of her wanted to shout out, to refuse, to tear the world apart in order to keep her mother safe? But it wasn't her choice to make. Her mother slowly placed the heartstone in Emily's hands, wrapping her fingers around it. "This is your moment," she said softly. "The gateway is sealed. But you have the power to end this once and for all. Don't waste it. Don't let them win." The weight of the stone in her hands felt heavier than anything Emily had ever carried. It pulsed with a strange, quiet power, a reminder of what was at stake. With one last look at her mother, Emily nodded. "I understand." For a brief moment, they stood together in the silence of the cottage, the world outside frozen in time. Then, Emily turned toward the door. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for certain. The Watchers wouldn't have her. Not without a fight. And she would fight no matter the cost. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What would you do if you were Emily? Would you make the same choice? The Watchers are not done with her yet. Stay tuned.